I'm sure you've noticed that everything is a subscription, or at least has the option for one. I think it's getting a little out of hand. I was shopping for a printer a little while ago, and aside from the abysmal way that different ink cartridges are labeled and sold, there was also a subscription constantly being thrown in my face. HP forces me to use their app to set up my printer, and during that setup, they offer a subscription service that delivers ink to you based on the average amount of ink used to print X amount of pages. I'm 23 years old. I almost never print documents. I feel like most people older than me don't print documents as much as they even think they do, and certainly not enough to justify a subscription service to have ink delivered to them. It's certainly just to have people use the free trial, forget they subscribed to it, get charged for it, and then start receiving random ink in the mail. Subscriptions get even worse when it comes to digital services and ownership. HBO, Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and even games like Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege have subscription options. Now, games having subscriptions is something I hate, but it isn't necessarily new. Games like World of Warcraft and Wizards 101 have had this model for decades. I hate that in some cases, expansions I paid for are essentially stripped away from me if I stop paying for the subscription. I believe that these services are inherently predatory. There are a few reasons that I believe that. Allow me to explain. There are a few things at play here. The endowment effect is the idea that once you have access to something, you value it more because it's yours, regardless of if other people can access a very similar thing, if not the exact same thing as you. Loss aversion is the idea that people dislike losing access to something they have already paid for, so some people might keep renewing their subscription to avoid that loss. The Zeigarnik effect is the idea that people have a tendency to remember unfinished tasks, like a subscription you haven't fully utilized. This can push people to keep it active and try to get that value that they believe they have not received from it yet. These all could motivate you to keep a subscription open, and once you keep it open, the sunk cost fallacy will likely take effect. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias where people continue a behavior or commitment because of the time, effort, or money they've already invested into it, regardless of if cutting their losses would be more rational and beneficial for them. It doesn't matter if it's intentionally predatory, it still is. Just because I took something that I didn't know was yours does not mean I did not take from you. A more practical example is that you pay for Netflix, you hardly ever use it, so you cancel it. Then you remember that one time you did watch a TV show on it, so eventually you resubscribe to finish that show. Now the next time you feel like you should cancel the subscription, you might remember the previously described situation, and it could motivate you to keep your subscription active. And if all of that didn't stop you from canceling your subscription, a lot of companies will make it insanely difficult or tedious to cancel a subscription. The option to cancel is always hidden behind a bunch of "you'll miss out" or "are you sure" pop-ups. Some services will make you go to their website to cancel even if you signed up on the app. Some services even require you to email support or talk to a live agent to cancel a subscription. And others, like Adobe, have charged people insane cancellation fees to cancel their subscription. If you end up getting a live agent, they will try absolutely everything in their power to convince you not to leave. And I can't fault them for it because it's their job, but it's been directed by the company. These subscription models even hurt ownership. You probably haven't truly owned anything digitally in a long time. Let's keep talking about Adobe. You cannot outright buy a license to any of the Adobe products. You are forced to agree to a subscription, and Adobe will do crazy things to ensure that you cannot cancel your subscription. The previously mentioned cancellation fees and making canceling extremely difficult. I would gladly pay $200 for an official license of one Adobe product, even if that license is only for that specific Adobe version released that year. But instead, if I want to use an Adobe product through the official means, I am forced to pay a subscription. I'm sick of them. Not every service needs to have an accompanying subscription, and if it does have one, it doesn't need to be shoved in my face at every waking moment. With all of that complaining out of the way, I do want to highlight at least one industry that I think does subscription services right, or the most right that they can be. I believe that the music industry is a good example of how industries should work in terms of consumer options. Now, the actual inner workings of the music industry are questionable at best, but consumers have lots of options. options between Amazon, Apple, YouTube, Tidal, and even Pandora, just to name a few. You can opt in to pay a subscription, listen for free with ads, purchase a license to a specific song or album, or buy physical copies of some albums. There are actual options for engaging with this form of media. I like to purchase albums and songs I like instead of paying for a subscription. I will occasionally use a free trial to listen to music I've never heard before, but I will never pay for a subscription service long term. This is how services should be, in my opinion. My main issue is exclusivity to specific platforms, but that seems to be a thing of the past, thankfully. I'd like to see a lot of industries emulate the good that the music industry has done. Of course, there are flaws with the music industry, oversaturation and unoriginality mainly, but I can't think of a music industry specific issue that it suffers from. Not to say that these issues don't exist, I just can't think of any.